Although rare, a bad starter relay could prevent your bike from starting. And if this were the case, if it were the starter relay that were causing a problem, you would get power to virtually everything else on your bike, but the starter switch would basically do nothing. There we go. If we try and hit the starter, nothing happens at all. And you can hear the fuel pump going when you turn the bike on. However, keep in mind that a Grom and many other modern bikes come with other safety measures in place. So if you're not pulling in the clutch, or if you don't have the kickstand down or up, you might not be able to start the bike either. So check those things first, because those are the most simple and obvious things to check before you start taking your bike apart. But if you have already checked those things, then this video is for you, and hopefully it will help get you back on the road again. If you have absolutely no power at all to your bike, it could be that you have a blown main fuse, and I'll put a link to my other video on how to diagnose and fix that in the description of this video. All right, so this is our starter relay. Let's get this guy out of here. Let's check the connections on here first, though, to make sure there's nothing like obvious. But let's get it off of let's pull it off of its little perch, take its little cover off here. There we go, starter relay. So to disconnect the starter relay from the wiring harness, there are two tabs on either side of the relay. Pull up both of those tabs while simultaneously pulling the relay away from the wiring harness. And that will disconnect the relay from the wiring harness. So on your Grom, your starter switch may do nothing if you have a bad starter relay. And basically, I think of these relays and relays in general as automated switches, because they can be used in such a way that when you turn on one switch or turn on power to the bike, you turn on the ignition switch, it'll send power to a relay, which then will send power to some other device. I've used these before on applications for installing aftermarket seats and things like that in a car. They can also be used when operating something high-powered, like a starter, using a low-powered manual switch, like a starter switch on your handlebars. So basically, a relay has 4 poles, which you can see here, these 4 electrical connections in here. How that works is you've got these 4 poles. On the Grom, what you've got is that you've got power coming in to this one pole all the time from the battery. Always juice coming into this guy here. And it's just waiting to bridge this little gap between these guys over to the actual starter motor, which would then start the bike. So it's just waiting to bridge this gap. Then the juice comes from your starter switch. The same flow of electricity from positive to negative. And so this one goes to ground. And so that would ground to the frame somewhere this way. But coming into it, we've got power from the actual starter switch. So the guy on your handlebars that you're pushing, that guy goes right here. And then what this does is that when energy flows through this guy here, it activates a little switch inside the relay that turns on and goes and bridges these two things here. It clicks this thing into place. And then we've got juice going to the starter motor, and that actually turns the bike on. All right, so to test our starter relay. All right, so on the Grom, and I can only tell you this applies to the Grom specifically. I don't know if it will apply to other bikes. Probably. They probably use the same type of relay, but I can't tell you for sure. On the Grom, we want to apply the positive to this pole over here. So this guy, I'm attaching the alligator clip like that. And then the other one, the negative, goes to this guy over here. And then these get applied to the battery, the positive side of the battery, and then the negative side of the battery. And I will install the positive side of the battery first, and then the negative. And on my battery, here is the positive side with the red wire, and then the negative side is over here. It should also be marked on the battery. This post on the battery is also red, whereas this one is black. And so we've got our relay still hooked up. The other end of those wires are over here. We've got the red. Attach that one first to my battery over here. When I touch this side over to the negative terminal, I'll be essentially supplying juice to the battery to activate those 2 poles on the bottom. This is the same way the starter would activate poles. And so you'll hear that click. That click is the little switch inside the relay turning on and activating these 2 poles on the top. So that's the same way when you hit the starter switch on your bike, that would be this juice coming through and going through these poles, activating that switch. The activating of that switch should supply power from the battery, directly from the battery, to the starter motor and turn it on. So we can further test this guy and see if this is actually supplying power, because even though you may have that switch going on in here, there may be an issue with connecting these two poles, between those two poles there, and where juice is still not getting through for some reason or another. Most likely though, if you had a failed relay, you would not hear this click. That's a definite sign that the relay is no good. But we can test it further. If we get out a multimeter, and this multimeter is a pretty simple one, so it's off right now. I'll turn it to ohms, this guy over here, and then we can test the actual relay. All right, so now the negative connection is not connected on here. So there's no juice flowing through these bottom two, so there should be no juice flowing through those top two. And so I could put these on here basically in either way, but I'm gonna put the negative over there, positive over there, and then if we look at our dial, there's nothing happening there. But now if we actually activate the relay by attaching the negative terminal here, we can hear that click. Now, watch this gauge here, we should get juice through here. Right? Do you see that dial move? That means we got juice going all the way through here. And then most generally, most people recommend using continuity. If you had a different gauge on here, I don't have continuity on this multimeter, so that's why I'm using the ohms instead. It just tells me whether or not I got juice going through or I don't. Like I said before, it'd be pretty rare if your starter relay went out, but if that turns out to be the case on your bike, I hope this video helps you out and gets you back on the road enjoying your little motorcycle. Have fun, everybody. We'll talk to you later.